It's good to be back. After months of preparation and planning for this grand event, my series of reviews on Season 2 of the Powerpuff Girls reboot has now officially begun. Truthfully, this has been a long time coming. We've got quite the journey ahead of us, because with a new season comes new characters, new episodes, and most importantly, new experiences. I'm starting this next season of episode reviews with a clean slate. It's a fresh start for me as a reviewer to make this next batch of videos a million times better than my first go. I've come a long way since my Escape from Monster Island review, and I intend on continuing to grow as these go on. But without further ado, let's roll. Guys! Hold up. Before we get into all that, it's time for a brief history lesson. For those unaware, the second season of the PPG reboot was first confirmed to be in production only about a month after the series had first premiered. Lines had already been recorded for some of the episodes, meaning that writing had likely been completed, at least to a certain degree, and the animation phase was probably about to get started if it hadn't already. However, there's an old saying that goes, "Don't count your chickens before they hatch," and I think it holds some weight here given Cartoon Network's treatment of this show when compared to its overall reception. It seems that most people have lost interest in the reboot, and I can't really blame them. But I'm still pushing through, as you can clearly see by me making this video on the Season 2 premiere. I've already made it this far, right? May as well keep going. The title of this episode is loosely based on The Last Unicorn, an animated film from 1982 about a unicorn who goes on a journey to find out what happened to her kind after she learns that she is, indeed, the last unicorn. Outside of the title, the episode itself doesn't really have much to do with the film, but I can appreciate the reference nonetheless. Compared to most other titles that this reboot has, this is one of the slightly above average ones, which is saying something. It certainly beats out A Star is Blossom, but that's for another day. It's also worth noting that The Last Donnycorn is a special episode of the Powerpuff Girls reboot, not only for being the season premiere, but also because it was featured for a physical release on DVD, along with a slew of other episodes. I've seen this floating around in stores from time to time, but I've never had the intention of buying it because I don't want to give the show any more money than necessary. Besides, it wouldn't be the Powerpuff Girls reboot without some sort of blatant error, and sure enough, this DVD cover's got one. Despite the fact that the title of the DVD is based on this episode, The Last Donnycorn, Donnie's horn is missing. Why is a model of Donnie from the episode Horn Sweet Horn featured on the DVD cover when that episode isn't on the DVD? That's a pretty noticeable slip up if you ask me, but then again, when it comes to this show, I'm more surprised when there isn't a mistake, because for some reason these sorts of errors are way more common than any other show. Seriously, I'm convinced this cartoon is cursed or something. Let's take a look at this promotional poster that was released on Twitter shortly before the episode had originally premiered. Righted? Drawed? I swear this is being done on purpose. And if you want some more proof, 2018 marks the 20th anniversary of the Powerpuff Girls, and to celebrate, Cartoon Network released a short video featuring Julia Michaels doing a cover of the theme song. The cover itself is pretty good, and I'll give credit where it's due, but the mistake occurs when this logo appears at the end of it. Not only is the sound editing awkward as hell, but the girls' stockings are completely missing. How does someone not notice that? It's gotten to the point where I'm genuinely becoming convinced that these mistakes are being done on purpose, purely because of how often they occur within the show and its surroundings. I am very forgiving when it comes to animation errors, but the sheer abundance of these that plague the reboot is why I'm so harsh on them. They just make everything look sloppy. I'm sorry. But that aside, there have been a few minor changes made between seasons 1 and 2, such as updated character models. I stumbled across this particular post on Tumblr, showing a few sheets of some updated models done by one of the newer character designers on the reboot as an attempt of capturing a better idea of what Powerpuff Anatomy is all about. Given that season 1 suffered from a lot of anatomy problems, and I mean a lot of anatomy problems, I guess CN saw the opportunity to hire someone to take a crack at making it easier for the animators to stick with the proper character design philosophy. I still think it's worth pointing out this model change regardless because it's something that not many people may have noticed. I'm aware that the difference is somewhat subtle and it doesn't quite fix any of the bigger issues with the show, such as the animation errors, poor pacing, and plot holes, which I'll be getting to later in the video, don't worry. But this side-by-side comparison should hopefully make it a little easier to see the differences between both seasons when it comes to the way the Powerpuff Girls look. The changes are there, no matter how minuscule they may be. I don't really mind the change, so that's good at least. Season 2 also has the minor improvement of updating its title cards for episodes that are either focused on all 3 of the girls instead of one in particular, or Mojo Jojo if it's an episode revolving around him. Season 1 episodes that feature all 3 of the girls have title cards that are assigned the color pink without any real correlation to the events of the episode themselves. It obviously makes sense when it comes to episodes that specialize in one of the girls individually, such as Road Trippin' being blue to signify that it is a Bubbles episode and Electric Buttercup being green because it stars Buttercup. However, episodes like Bye Bye Bellum, Somewhere Over the Swing Set, and Secret Swapper of Doom just select pink as the dominant color and run with it, leading to the coordination aspect losing a little bit of its significance because those episodes aren't necessarily Blossom-centric. In fact, the only Reboot episode to break this pattern is Halt and Catch Silico, which is blue despite it not being solely dedicated to Bubbles. A small detail, but a positive one nonetheless. I fully welcome this change.
Guys, you gotta help me! Ah! They're after me! Ah!
So the last Donnycorn appears to start off well with an unexpected and sudden hook right from the get-go, in which we see Donnie barging straight into the girl's bedroom in the middle of the night in a heated panic while screaming that something is out to get him. The sudden outburst does a good job at leaving us in the dark as to what could be so horrible that he's bothering the Powerpuff Girls at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's a good attempt at building suspense the instant the episode begins. Unfortunately, this doesn't get very far because, well, he never stops talking.
Just tell us who's after you.
Oh, nobody, just the most dangerous force in all of Unicorn Land!
Donnie, stop.
Roll credits. As one would expect, Bubbles goes right along with Donnie's shenanigans and freaks out with him for a few seconds before the two just evolve into a bunch of goofy laughter when it's really not the time and place for that sort of thing. I get that the gag is attempting to portray that the two of them are best friends who act silly together, but all of that suspense and urgency that was just pushed onto me is gone now. There's no more threat, no more enticing reason for me to want to see what's happening. It completely undermines the hook that just took place and loses all merit in a matter of seconds. This unicorn hunter then proceeds to scan all 3 of the girls, labeling them as sugar, spice, and everything nice, coinciding with each of the girls' 3 respective ingredients, and then proceeding to label Donnie as wimp.
Sugar, spice, everything nice, wimp, target acquired.
I can see what this joke is going for, but honestly, I think this version is a little bit more accurate.
Wimp, 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 wimp.
Okay, so now we're introduced to the character that's been hunting Donnie down, which just so happens to be an obvious parody of the Terminator. You can even hear a bit of an homage to the original theme in the background music that plays during its entrance.
Donnie the unicorn, prepare to be destroyed.
That's him! He's the one who's been chasing me!
Ooh, I like his jacket.
The hook for this episode does a good job at drawing people in because it leaves unanswered questions at the end of this opening scene. So honestly, if that one joke where Bubbles and Donnie completely kill the mood were cut out, I'd still be enthralled with what's going on right now. It may have been a little slow getting up to this point, but it still has that foreboding uncertainty about what exactly Donnie did to get him into so much trouble. The girls get ready to fight before Donnie decides to just magically teleport to a bowling alley because apparently he can do that now for no real reason whatsoever. Maybe it's because it's LOL so random, I guess, but even then there's no setup or punchline or anything. It's just the plain fact that he can teleport to bowling alleys. And why does it have to be bowling alleys? Was it because the show wanted to make a Big Lebowski reference? I mean, sure, given that his name is Donnie, I suppose that could work, but all I've really wanted to see in regards to that so far is for someone to say,
"Shut the fuck up, Donnie."
Here is where we get the main character conflict in this episode. Buttercup relentlessly calls Donnie out for being a chicken and running away, and honestly, I can't feel bad for him. I really can't. He's been known to act foolishly in the past, as seen in the episodes Horn Sweet Horn and Odd Bubbles Out from Season 1, so I can totally understand why Buttercup would be upset with his behavior. She's had bad experiences with him before and never came across as liking him the same way that Bubbles does because of his past actions. However, while I may agree that she should be giving Donnie a hard time, I cannot agree with her reasoning for doing so, because she explains that the biggest detriment of his behavior lies in the fact that the robot thinks they're wusses now. That's not the problem. The problem is that they could have taken it down at that moment and saved themselves the trouble of having to come to this random bowling alley and wasting time by allowing the bigger threat in Unicorn Land more time to gain power. I don't think that the robot actually cares if it thinks they're wusses or not. On the bright side, this gives the girls more time to gather information as to what's going on from Donnie's perspective and plan for further action once they know the details, as opposed to just charging right in like they were going to, while also leading the robot into a false sense of security for the next time that they fight each other. So yeah, I'd say Buttercup's criticisms are fallacious and hold little weight given the situation, because the girls could still theoretically make the most out of their predicament that they're in. After recovering from their recent escape, Donnie proceeds to explain to the girls what exactly happened that ultimately led to this mess that he conjured up. It started back when he was playing frolic ball with his friends during what I'm assuming to be a gym class of some sort. It's not entirely clear, but seeing as there appears to be an instructor or coach with a whistle, I'm going to guess it's either a class or sports practice. All of his other friends were roaming around while Donnie predictably screwed up and kicked the ball into the ancient cursed dark forest of darkness. And no, I'm not kidding, that's what it's actually called.
La 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 la. Oh no! The ball went into the ancient cursed dark forest of darkness.
It's repetitive and redundant. It's repetitive and redundant. We certainly are entertaining, Mac. Indubitably, Tosh.
We begin to see that Donnie's entire character in this episode is purely made out of unintentionally doing things, whether it be accidentally losing the ball in the forest, or letting the villain escape, or mistakenly helping the girls, as we'll see later on. It's kinda like Forrest Gump. You know, where the endearing character that the audience loves finds himself in all of these important places without realizing the sheer magnitude of significance that the events taking place have in human history. The only difference is that none of the same lovable charm is present here compared to that film, because there's nothing charming or lovable about Donnie whatsoever. As events transpire, Donnie goes into the forest and ends up falling down a pit with a million stairs that goes on for way too long, after which he arrives at the bottom to see where his ball has landed. He also comes up to this ominous mirror, which common sense and instinct would tell him to stay far away from, but
The mirror glowed with a ghostly energy. A voice whispered from the void, "Johnny, Johnny."
Wait! I got to potty. Seriously?
okay, normally I would react to this clip or something, but I'm actually drawn to the image in the background more than anything else. There's a Big Lebowski poster in the 2016 Powerpuff Girls reboot. It's no secret to most dedicated Powerpuff fans that the original creator, Craig McCracken, loves the Big Lebowski. He's referenced it in literally all of the shows he's created, and his wife Lauren even gave it a special nod in an episode of Friendship is Magic. This is just a hunch, but I have a strong feeling that this specific reference to this specific film of all films wasn't a coincidence. I mean, why else would Donnie teleport to bowling alleys out of literally any other random location that could be chosen? It could be hospitals, it could be schools, it could be libraries, it could be donut shops, it could be morgues, it could be locker rooms, it could be piers, it could be fairs, it could be jungles, it could be the inside of an ice cream truck. It could literally even be a janitor's closet. I just listed several other potential settings that the rest of this first half of the episode could have taken place at, and aside from a few one-liners later on, there isn't really any significance as to why this had to take place at a bowling alley. Do bowling alleys have some sort of protective force field around them that make it difficult for the Terminator to find them? Yeah, that may be a bit of a stretch for an idea, but at least it's a start. I am mostly convinced that this setting was only chosen to make the Big Lebowski reference, which in and of itself seems to be an attempt to appeal to fans of the older show. Why else would it even be here? Only older fans would know that the Big Lebowski is connected to the Powerpuff Girls through various episodes and its creator. It's hard to believe that this was just a funny accident. Yes, I realize what I'm saying will mostly just be queued up to heavy speculation, but to add on to that, I would just like to say that it is such a missed opportunity that the show does not make use of Donnie's name and reference the film in a clever way. Even so much as a "shut up Donnie" would be sufficient, but instead all we get is this incomplete basic poster. That's disappointing. So Donnie thinks that the best thing to do in front of the mirror is make funny faces because, And somehow, don't ask me how, but somehow, this causes the mirror to activate and free these shrouded, evil-looking figures from their imprisonment. There's the Terminator unicorn, 3 moderately sized ones, and this tiny one in the center. Okay, got it? Good. We'll stick a pin in this for now and come back to it later. So now that the girls have heard the backstory that ultimately got Donnie into this mess, the Killer Corn shows up again in a helicopter. As expected, once Donnie lays his eyes upon the Killer Corn, he immediately wants to scuffle off to the next nearby bowling alley, namely in a location that sounds all too familiar to a fan of the old show.
Hey guys, how about we check out the cool bowling alley over in Citiesville? That's far, right?
Too bad, too late. Any fans of the classic show, sans myself and a few others, have already stopped following this series long before season 2 even premiered. If this were shown in the first season to attempt to win the nostalgic people over, then honestly I think it would have been received better, but by the time this episode had premiered, these references ultimately fell on deaf ears because not many people were paying attention to it anymore. Yeah, the show tried, but these were feeble attempts at best. It's gonna take a lot more than a few subtle references to win most people over. When people like a show, small references and homages to things like this are just the icing on top of the cake. Yes, they are nice, and the audience, including myself, appreciates it when they see references to previous continuity intertwined with an overall good product. I'm not knocking that. But this case in particular is like putting fresh icing on top of an already spoiled cake. Just because there's this delectable icing on top doesn't mean people are going to enjoy it if the entire rest of the cake is moldy and repulsive.
That's what I call 3 strikes, you turkey. Nice.
Oh, they're still doing the fist bump thing, so that hasn't changed, but at least I can say the bowling puns are kinda clever. And so, conflict commences between the Killer Corn and the Powerpuff Girls in an action-packed battle that honestly doesn't seem any more enjoyable than playing No Man's Sky. Okay, I'll admit that the action in the show in particular is probably better than any fight scene we've gotten to witness out of the entirety of season 1, but compared to that of the original series, this is still very subpar. And I know what some of you are thinking. Shadowstreak, it's not fair to judge this episode based off the original because this is a different show. Okay, I tend to get this criticism from time to time, and I'll admit, I used to do this quite a lot. However, towards the second half of my season 1 reviews, I began to base my opinions of each episode off of the reboot itself and not let the original series' quality influence my point of view too much anymore. But The Last Donnycorn is clearly wanting to grab the attention of fans of the original series, so I'm considering someone's point of view from that position as well as one from a reboot-only perspective. The Big Lebowski poster, the Citiesville reference, the acknowledgement of the girls' ingredients, it all just screams classic show. There were specific standards set by the 1998 series that The Last Donnycorn is currently not living up to, and unfortunately, it's all downhill from here.
I cannot be stopped.
Oh, please, spare me.
You know, I've been pretty split on this episode so far. I mean, At first I thought this premise was going to have an interesting spin on it that would be right up my alley, but as the episode keeps rolling along, I'm beginning to develop the opinion that this episode belongs in the gutter.
You girls handle this. I'm gonna take a quick nap.
I don't know if I've made it clear up to this point, but so far the Season 2 premiere seems to have just as many minor flub-ups as the Season 1 episodes. I'm not even trying to go out of my way to nitpick. I've noticed all of these flaws across only 3 viewings of this episode. These aren't frame-by-frame mistakes. These are hard to miss.
Okay, Donny, no need to panic. Buttercup can totally handle those things all by herself.
Ouch. That actually adds some visible impact to it. I'm surprised the reboot doesn't do this more, considering this sound choice along with the shake and blur effects gives the impact a little more oomph to it. You'd be surprised how much of a difference minor details like that can make when it comes to things like this.
Hasta la pasta, Donny.
Oh, clever. It's a reference to the Terminator's famous Hasta la Vista line. Only for some reason Vista was changed to pasta, but like, why? Why not just say Hasta la Vista? It's not like the phrase is in and of itself copywritten. Sure, it worked for the Mario Brothers Super Show, but that's because the Mario Brothers are actually Italian. This Killer Corn doesn't have any character traits that even resembles it as such.
No one hurts my best friend. Hi, Donny.
Yes, Bubbles, because this was clearly the smartest thing to do in this situation. As you can clearly tell by the heavier emphasis I'm placing on clips here, there is quite a lot going on. I think that speaks as to how dynamic of a scene this really is. Like, sure, the hit flashes are still there and a lot of the impacts between the girls and the Killer Corn are censored for the most part, but it's at least a little bit faster than previous encounters. I'm also extremely glad that the girls don't just go down in one hit this time, which was a major recurring theme in Season 1. Even if the action is still watered down, it's certainly better than most of the reboot and has a lot of things to talk about, including this other clip right here.
Your friend is very noble, but very much a dum-dum.
Really? I mean, like, sure, I don't expect the show to swear or anything, but dum-dum? Come on, the show can at least be more threatening than that, right?
Prepare to be annihilated!
So, you, just gonna stand there and let Donnie find a way out of this? Like, you could just hit him or something to weaken him first? You could fire that cannon any second now. Why does it need to be fully charged up? You're gonna let him find a way out. You are, aren't you? Wow, good job. Seriously, even with the compliments that I gave the other sections of the fight, this moment right here just drags on way too long for its own good. There's no reason why this Killer Corn should be charging up for so long, and yeah, I get that the main purpose as to why it's stalled is so Donnie can pull off this joke with the car not having wheels, which was a reference to Puff Dora's box, by the way, for those who may not have caught that. But even still, it just overstays its welcome. I would have rather had Donnie just grab the macaroni sculpture from the get-go the instant he saw the Killer Corn aim the cannon at him, sort of out of raw instinct instead of delaying it like this. That would have made this moment feel a lot faster in retrospect and probably would have led to a more satisfying death for the Killer Corn as well. Speaking of which,
He is the chosen.
Boo.
look, honestly, I wish I could tell you what I just watched, but honestly, I can't find the words that can help comprehend it. The Killer Corn was a sock the whole time, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why that is. As far as I can tell, the fact that this hunter is just a sock underneath serves no purpose whatsoever, other than to be more LOL so random humor, because this episode clearly hasn't had enough of that already. Either way, I think it would have been better off just exploding into a bunch of mechanical pieces and leaving it there. Again, an instance where had this extra fluff been cut out, the episode would have been better. Less is more, as this episode is clearly not demonstrating.
Whoa! He was a robot the whole time!
Yeah, what gave it away? The laser visor? The mechanical arm gun? The obviously robotic voice? The fact that the thing literally got blown to pieces without any gore whatsoever, then magically rebuilt itself with clearly visible mechanical parts exposed? I don't get why this line was included. I think it would have been better off if it was changed to something else. It's also worth noting that Donnie takes down the Killercorn the exact same way he and Bubbles did with Chelsea back in the episode Odd Bubbles Out, with the villain aiming a laser at him and it being reflected back at themselves. Just an interesting observation I found, nothing more, nothing less. Blossom then proceeds to tell the girls that they need to go to Unicorn Land to save the rest of Donnie's friends and family, and so the four of them head out to do just that. Part 1 of this episode ends off with the girls arriving at the Unicorn Land bowling alley, only to find that everything has been completely destroyed, everyone died, and I couldn't be happier because it means no more unicorns in the PPG reboot.
Looks like the Powerpuff Girls are going to Unicorn Land! So, how do we get there?
I'll teleport us to the bowling alley in Unicorn City. Hang on! Woo! We can totally get a game in before we have to save Unicorn Land?
And we're back with the last Donnycorn. Let's continue with this episode's second half. So the quartet runs into a group of what appear to be evil henchmen at first, but quickly reveal themselves to be Donnie's mother, her boyfriend Axel, and Gretel, aka Not Derpy Hooves.
Oops, my bad.
But I digress. The three of them decide to take Donnie and the PPGs to their secret headquarters so that they can devise a plan.
Now, hurry. Let's get you to the UACBRHQ before it's too late.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The UACBRHQ.
One more time.
The UACBRHQ.
The UACBRHQ, huh? And what does that stand for exactly?
The Unicorn Coalition Alliance Brigade Rebel Headquarters.
Uh-huh, I see. The Unicorn Coalition Alliance Brigade Rebel Headquarters. Yep, makes perfect sense to me. Again, this is another example in the infinite list of examples in which this show displays how unpolished it is. So remember those unicorns that came out of the mirror back in part 1? Well, it turns out that they happen to be none other than the 4 unicorns of the apocalypse, as Donnie's mother explains. For those unfamiliar with the legend that the show is parodying here, these 4 unicorns are based off of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, famously known from an old biblical tale found in the book of Revelations. The 4 figures ride on white, red, black, and pale horses, each representing conquest, war, famine, and death, respectively. The reboot doesn't go nearly as in-depth with the references, however, it's still cool to see it nonetheless. I like seeing the 4 horsemen referenced in popular culture, which I'm sure many of you watching have probably also seen somewhere else before. It turns out that when Donnie had released these 4 unicorns from the, and please bear with me here, I'm not making this up, from the
Infamous Dark Horse Dark Magic Mirror of Darkness.
It's repetitive and redundant. It's repetitive and redundant. We certainly are entertaining, Mac. Indubitably, Tosh.
The infamous Dark Horse Dark Magic Mirror of Darkness. Okay, so yeah, that sounds great and all, but if everything Donnie's mother is saying were true, then why do 5 unicorns leave the mirror in part 1? Remember when I told you to memorize that screenshot from a little while ago? Well, now we're back to take that pin out of that idea and discuss it here now that more context has made itself available. Based on this flashback animation, the Killercorn wasn't a part of the 4 horsemen at all, as it was not present in the crystal ball animation, nor was it mentioned by Donnie's mother, who apparently seems to know the legend inside and out. So that just leads me to more questions. Was the robot sealed inside the mirror at a separate time? How did it get there if it was? Was it created while the unicorns were trapped inside? And if so, how are they capable of building it? How did it come into being? Was the idea for the Terminator a last-minute addition to the episode itself? Or was it meant to be a separate episode altogether? Why is the writing of this episode full of so many unanswered questions? And most importantly, why is it a talking sock? It would have been nice had one of the characters quickly asked where the Killercorn came from and Donnie's mother respond, but alas, we get nothing. The show could have at least nodded to this sock reference by showing one of the other 4 unicorns coming out of the portal without a sock on, so that there's at least some acknowledgement as to why it exits with them. That would imply that the unicorns used their magic inside the mirror to create this killer and enchanted a sock because it was all they had available to them. But, of course, then that would lead to more questions, and this show has never cared about that level of detail, so yeah, as far as I can tell, this Terminator just comes from literally out of nowhere. Furthermore, how does Donnie's mom and the others know Donnie stumbled upon this mirror and made a funny face in front of it? Donnie explained, poorly anyways, in the first half that he literally ran straight from the opening of the portal to the home of the Powerpuff Girls, so he didn't have time to stop by and tell his family what he had done. The only way the rest of them could have figured this out was the possibility of the mirror having a surveillance system on it, maybe, I guess, or the villains confronted the good guys at some point off screen, but neither of these options, or anything for that matter, are mentioned during this exposition dump, so it's an entire piece of the puzzle lost to the Dark Horse Dark Magic Mirror of Darkness. Yes, they're obviously aware that the 4 unicorns are free, but how do they know that Donnie made the funny face when he never tells them? What, am I expected to believe that someone just has cameras all over the world?
Yes, now shut up!
Also, Unicorn Land really needs to upgrade their security systems. You'd think for a prison holding the 4 most threatening beings in the land that there'd be a little more than an elevator keeping it hidden from the outside world, but I guess not.
Yes, unicorn weeks have 8 days. Today's a Spurs Day, so it's obviously the best day to infiltrate their defense.
Spurs Day. Well, I have nothing more to add here. Donnie's mother informs the girls and her son that the only way to steal the 4 unicorns of the apocalypse back inside the mirror is by having Donnie make the same funny face that he used to release them. Again, why the funny face happens to be the mechanism used to activate this mirror's abilities is beyond me, and furthermore, what makes him the chosen one that's meant to accomplish this great task? Sure, other media has tackled this idea before, such as the Lego Movie for example, where an ordinary main character happens to be the special, but the film explores different ideas with that concept, while this episode just says it is so and moves along like it's nothing. Whenever there's a chosen one plot in a show, movie, what have you, I'm always going to expect a reason why. Sometimes it could be that they're a descendant of royal blood, as is the case with T'Challa and Black Panther. Sometimes the reason is from some ancient prophecy, as is the case with the movie Pokemon 2000. And sometimes it's just made up and doesn't apply to one specific person, as is the case with the aforementioned Lego Movie. And yes, some of these plot ideas have been more exhausted than others, but none of this exists in the last Donnycorn. Donnie just happens to be the chosen one because the episode says so, and that's about all there is to it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oh, why's it gotta be me?
Because, Donnie, you are the chosen one.
What does that even mean?
Buttercup, you took the words right out of my mouth. The episode doesn't really care to elaborate on this, it just moves right along. All I'm saying is I really would have liked a more compelling reason as to why he's the one that needs to accomplish this and not the girls, for instance. And so, the unicorns and the Powerpuff Girls devise themselves a plan so that they can banish the unicorns back into the mirror and prevent Stanicorn from absorbing all the unicorn magic in the land and taking over their world, as well as others beyond that. They start by figuring out a way that will allow them to sneak into the enemy base and put an end to the 4 unicorns' reign of terror, to which they conclude that they'll have to sneak into the fortress. Their method of disguise? Well, Donnie's mother just happened to have some leftover skins of unicorns that recently died in the war lying around, so the girls just go ahead and slip inside the warm, moist skin suits without any issues, and proceed to parade around wearing their corpses like a child going trick-or-treating on Halloween. Thus, the 4 of them set out to infiltrate the defenses of the 4 unicorns of the apocalypse and take them down to prevent the utter destruction of their world and everyone around them. Turns out Donnie's mom only has magic strong enough to teleport them outside of the fortress, so the girls will have to find their own way in. Luckily, that shouldn't be much of a problem for the Powerpuff Girls because all they have to do is punch through the tower and land in the room where Stanicorn is. Only they don't do that because this is the reboot we're talking about here, so we get to watch the girls slowly walk there, on foot I might add, at a much slower rate. The next part, truthfully, agitates me to a small degree.
Do you guys know where the bathroom is?
Yeah, it's over there.
Actually, buddy, I'm pretty sure it's over there.
Excuse me, you don't work here at all.
Then neither do you!
Imposter! Oh, hey guys.
I gotta be honest, I cannot consider this a case of Donnie being a lovable idiot. Sure, I can see the intention with Donnie's behavior in moments before this one, but this is too far. He and Bubbles blowing their cover out in the open like that just feels like the show is purposefully trying to frustrate its audience. Instead of seeing any actual progress being made towards stopping the bad guy, We see two characters just blow their cover out in the open through a long and drawn out back and forth that takes way too long to get the punchline across. I get that the Powerpuff Girls reboot is attempting to be more dominantly focused on comedy rather than having the balanced action comedy style of old, but if the show is going to give us a serious episode with a serious plot, then I expect it to be taken seriously in some sense. It'd be one thing if the Powerpuff Girls and Donnie weren't taking things seriously to begin with from the get-go, and the episode was hamming everything up so that it's not meant to be serious, but this is a serious narrative that the episode is expecting to invest us in. And don't get me wrong, serious narratives can still do comedy, just look at almost every Marvel movie out there, but blatantly having the characters do something ignorant like this is annoying. Despite the Guardians of the Galaxy being a less serious group of heroes, you don't see them purposely blowing their cover in the middle of a serious moment. They still take situations seriously even though there are joking moments along the way. They're funny, but they aren't stupid. Donnie has been incompetent for the entire 15 minutes this episode has been playing so far, Bubbles is right there with him, and Buttercup just feels like getting pissy and yelling at them the whole time. Blossom is the only character that seems to want to put an end to the terror that the 4 unicorns of the apocalypse are causing, but she doesn't get any focus because everything always has to be about Donnie. Donnie this, Donnie that. It's agitating seeing this character act like a dumbass because he's just an annoying impediment to the greater goal, and that's what's probably most irritating out of everything that happens in The Last Donnycorn. If he were an innocent, lovable idiot, then that'd be one thing, but lovable idiots do not just pull something as asinine as this and get away with it. The episode clearly wanted the girls and Donnie to get captured at some point, but there were a million other paths that the episode could have taken to get them to the same spot without necessarily having the characters self-destruct their disguise, so to speak. The episode painfully makes the characters give themselves up because, hey, that's what we need to happen, except it doesn't. At least the plan could have failed normally instead of Bubbles and Donnie ignorantly ripping each other's costumes off. That would have been perfectly fine. But no. This means that the group is discovered through their disguises and thrown into the fortress's prison, which is where the 4 unicorns introduce themselves to the girls.
I am Joeycorn, and my sword-wielding skills have conquered countless civilizations throughout history.
I'm Petercorn, and my thrashing guitar skills have demolished entire planets. Ow!
I'm Tanyacorn, and I'm the girl one.
I also find it a little counterintuitive and somewhat contradictory that the episode decides to give Joey and Peter these defining character traits that signify who they are, and then just go ahead to label Tanya as the girl one without giving her any more character than that. Wasn't this reboot trying to be progressive by counteracting narrow-minded ideas such as this? Why is it affirming the very issue that it wants to fight against? Like, it'd be one thing if Tanya was satirizing the typical girl one tropes or disproving the issue entirely, but she's being played straight, so I have to say that the reboot has once again failed to complete one of the crucial missions it claimed it set out to do. Oh well, it's not like this is the first time it's happened, and it probably won't be the last either. Regardless, please feel free to take this next clip out of context as much as your little heart desires.
So incredibly hard.
So this last unicorn, as I just mentioned, is actually named Stanicorn, and it turns out the reason that he's extremely pessimistic and negative all the time is because he's never laughed at anything, and he wants to make everyone else miserable because he isn't enjoying himself. His monologue ultimately gets interrupted by a PA announcement, which gives the girls an opening to escape with little to no issue.
Hey, how'd you do that?
Supersonic punch, stone walls, you do the math.
Cool.
I really wish this show would do that more often. And so, we see the 4 unicorns of the apocalypse at their main base, with 3 of them chilling by the mirror while Stanicorn sits in this magic-fueled rainbow, absorbing all of its power as it passes through him. His plan is to essentially absorb all of the magic in Unicorn Land so that he can become powerful enough to take it over, along with several other worlds, giving him full control of countless beings' lives and making them as miserable as he is. The girls bust through the door to stop him, but now this suddenly makes me question why they couldn't have just done this in the first place. The first time around, they were unable to break in because there were guards everywhere, and for some reason they couldn't just fly through the area and beat up the guards along the way. But now they just show up at the front door like it's nothing. This makes the jail scene feel utterly pointless because the girls could have just gone straight from where they arrived to the main room of the base the whole time. The girls shouldn't have been afraid of getting captured or have gotten captured at all, no less. when they could just bust through the door in the first place? Everything else that has taken place at the fortress up to this point feels like it could have been completely avoided if the characters just used their superpowers. At least the girls kind of do so when they end up having to fight 3 of the unicorns while Donnie runs towards the mirror, although based on everything else Donnie has done in the episode so far, it's fairly obvious that he's never going to make it there. These fight scenes between the girls and Joey, Peter, and Tanya aren't really all that special, especially when compared to the Killer Corn fight scene from earlier, which was, quite frankly, a much better experience.
Aw, you're so cute. No, you're so cute.
And reaffirming the girl one stereotype from earlier, we have Bubbles and Tanya gently hit each other with pillows in your standard girls sleepover pillow fight, only for Bubbles to smack her hard with it once she's called to her senses by her sister. There's a pretty big blink and you'll miss it moment here, but I like this added detail of Bubbles smacking Tanya in the face with her spewing these little red hearts out of her mouth after the impact. It's a very minor detail, but if you aren't paying attention, you could easily misinterpret those hearts as blood, which is a very effective way of implying a more violent action than what has actually taken place here. I feel like if the reboot did more of this, in which it implies violence through safer means, I'd give it more points in the creativity department. However, Donnie not taking this mission seriously and failing to get to the mirror in time ruins a lot of the conflict that was just built up for me.
Where's Donnie?
Woo! High score!
Donnie!
The dude had one job. Just run to the freaking mirror, it's not that hard. But because of Donnie's insolence, Donnycorn achieves full power with no opposition whatsoever, and needless to say, he becomes pretty powerful.
It's too late.
Oh, yeah. Damn, boy. Damn, boy, he's thick, boy! That's a thick-ass boy! Damn!
It occurs to me that throughout all of this, Donnycorn and the other 3 unicorns of the apocalypse just left the mirror that could seal them away lying out in the open without any real form of protection. Donnycorn waits all the way until he's fully powered up to actually destroy the thing, so it's not out of the question that the mirror can't be easily shattered, but I don't know, I'd at least try to hide the damn thing instead of keeping it out in the open like that. It doesn't get any better when the girls decide to sacrifice themselves in order to prevent Donnycorn from hurting Donnie. This means that the girls have essentially gone down and had to have been saved by Donnie's dumb luck twice in the same episode. If that's not a prime example of nerfing the main characters down to an incompetent level for no real reason, I don't know what is. Honestly, the girls should have just tried beating up Donnycorn at this point as a way of stalling for time, because Donnie certainly wasn't planning on finishing the objective anytime soon. In fact, his ineptitude gets so bad that his mother has to transmit a message to him encouraging him to think positively about himself.
What's the most special thing about you, Donnie?
That I'm terrible at everything!
Actually, yes, that's completely correct. He is terrible at everything, as this episode has clearly shown us up to this point. It really irks me that Donnie's mother just refuses to tell us why Donnie is supposed to be the chosen one that everyone keeps babbling on about. This is one of the most crucial parts of the episode's plot, and it's just hidden behind this whole invisible barrier where none of the characters can explain what's so special about him. Donnie is just this magical character that can save Unicorn Land, but we aren't given any real reason as to why. We don't need a reason as to how he's going to do it, that's what the climax of the episode is for. But what makes Donnie the only character capable of doing this, and not literally anyone else? That information could have been very useful as to understanding what makes him so crucial, considering how useless he's been to the greater narrative, but nothing is ever said, as seen back during his mother's huge exposition dump.
I wish I had more time to explain, but we need to get you in that fortress now.
That's just lazy writing.
I don't know, it sounds like being told exactly how to stop the villains from succeeding is a pretty significant detail to know before going into their evil base to stop them. I'm pretty sure it would have taken all of another 2 minutes to simply just tell the characters what they need to do to take down the bad guy. One could argue that Donnie is the only one who can seal them away because he's the one who released them and the mirror won't respond to anyone else, but I'd counter that by questioning who'd sealed them away the first time around, and why the mirror reacted to Donnie now and not that person who sealed him originally. originally. These are important details that the characters need to know. When Donnie asks his mother how he can stop Donnycorn after he's destroyed the mirror, it's finally too late for her to answer.
How do I do that?
Oh, that's easy. The trick is to...
Go figure. Without answering the question as to what it means, she states that Donnie's biggest character trait is that he brings joy to those around him, that he brings happiness and laughter to even the most humorless of creatures. And you know what? I'd believe that if there were an example of him doing this earlier on in the episode. Nowhere in the past 20 minutes since the episode's beginning does Donnie make a single character laugh aside from the Powerpuff Girls themselves, who are prone to expressing laughter and joy all the damn time. Donnie has never, in all 3 episodes that he appears in, made another character laugh aside from Chelsea, who was an evil robot designed by Mojo Jojo and programmed to enjoy his company to make Bubbles jealous, so she doesn't really count. How would anyone be expected to believe that Donnie brings joy to anyone when we've never seen him do this before? There's no foreshadowing from the first or second acts of the episode, nor is there a line of dialogue that indicates this. The only thing he ever does is serve as an impediment towards progress, and it would be one thing if he was trying to better himself to not do that, but he just screws up everyone's plans on purpose. He ruined the fortress infiltration plan because he was just getting into his Beardy character, which is the excuse he gives when they're all thrown in prison. He couldn't get to the mirror in time because he decided that video games were more important than his loved ones. The only productive thing that Donnie has done the entire episode was accidentally causing the killer corn to shoot itself with a laser, but that can be chalked up to sheer dumb luck more than anything else. So, pardon me if I question the credibility of Donnie truly being referred to as the Chosen One. Anyways, let's just finish this episode already. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Donnie does this supposedly funny face that's so downright hilarious that it literally blasts Donnycorn's face off and kills him. Like, literally, it blasts his entire face off and kills him.
Check out my funniest face ever! It's too funny!
That was certainly something I did not expect to see in the Powerpuff Girls reboot, but sure enough, the show does intentionally kill him on screen before our very eyes. Guess the show took the phrase dying of laughter to a whole new level. The episode then ends off with a not so subtle parody of the famous ending to Star Wars Episode 4, with Donnie's mother rewarding the girls and her son with prestigious bejeweled baseball caps because the show just couldn't seem to resist making a YOLO joke in 2017.
It is with great pride that I bestow upon you the highest honor in all of Unicorn Land. These prestigious bejeweled trucker hats.
We've also got World's Best Aunt, Spring Break 95, and one cleverly labeled with the singular word, hat. But the one thing I can't get over, YOLO, in 2017. Nobody was saying YOLO when this show was first announced, let alone when this episode was made. YOLO died out in 2012. Season 2 is off to a great start, wouldn't you say? Not really, considering how that episode review just went. Don't worry though, things do eventually go up from here, trust me on that one. Future episodes outperform this by a long shot. This was the episode that was meant to get Season 2 started off on the right foot, but just like with Season 1, it tripped on its way out the gate and kept tumbling down an infinite flight of stairs in a sequence that went on for way too long. Kinda like this video, except maybe not really, because there was a lot to unpack here and I wanted to say as much as I could about all of it. A lot of you seem to like my longer styled reviews ever since I started making them around 15 minutes or so in length, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to try an even longer one. Don't get too used to this though, I only made the exception because it's a 22-minute episode compared to the usual 11 minutes. As for my concluding thoughts on how this episode was handled, well, Donnie's character is completely irredeemable in this episode for me personally. I find him to be way too much of a nuisance for him to be anything close to endearing, and none of his lines really resonate with me for being memorable, humorous, or significant. He's just a pain to watch because his idiocy takes away from any and all gravity from the situation, and leaves us with a meaningless plot that lacks any and all suspense and excitement outside of the first couple of minutes. Donnie seems to continue to get progressively worse with every single recurring episode that he appears in. Horn Sweet Horn had a lot of problems with it, but Donnie wasn't really a major focus of those issues so much as the tense behind it. Sure, he made one stupid decision by agreeing to getting treatment without reading the side effects, and it's kind of annoying that he proceeds to get angry anyways despite clearly signing a contract, but that's all there really was to it. If that was Donnie's only episode, I wouldn't really despise him as a character per se. The second episode, though, Odd Bubbles Out, knocked him down quite a few pegs for his lack of respect towards Bubbles' feelings and outright neglect for his best friend. The last Donnycorn now stoops him down to an even lower level, one that I think will be hard to recover from if he ever shows up in the series again. I can at least compliment the girls themselves for taking the situation more seriously and acting like the superheroes they're supposed to be, for the most part. Aside from that, there isn't anything else that needs to be added that I haven't already said previously during the review, and normally now is where I would discuss the morals execution, but seeing as this episode didn't have one, I can't really say much about that either. Well, anyways, I'm really glad that I got to kick off my Season 2 reviews like this. It's been a long time coming, but this marks the beginning of a bright future in which we explore what the second round of the Reboot episodes has to offer. I've been looking forward to the journey ahead, and it feels good to have finally taken the first step. Till next time, Shadowstreak, signing off.